just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company. But as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico.
John Deere making a big change to where they manufacture their farming equipment, leading to hundreds of U.S. layoffs. The farm equipment giant is laying off workers at 3 U.S. factories and shifting production to Mexico.
You won't believe what's going on with John Deere, the iconic American tractor manufacturer. Instead of expanding operations in its home state of Iowa, the company is investing a staggering $55 million in a new plant in Mexico. This comes despite looming threats of steep tariffs from the Trump administration. While some production lines in Iowa have been paused, John Deere is ramping up across the border. The decision follows former President Donald Trump's announcement of a possible 200% tariff, a figure that could disrupt the agricultural supply chain, put tens of thousands of jobs at risk, and leave farmers in a tough spot, especially during harvest season. Rather than make a public fuss, John Deere has quietly moved forward with this investment, aiming to keep production flowing smoothly. But it raises a bigger question. Is this simply a smart way to avoid the tariff shock, or a sign that American agricultural manufacturing is pulling back? For workers in key agricultural states, this is a harsh wake-up call. Jobs can disappear overnight because of changing trade policies. Companies like John Deere are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Stay and take the financial hit, or move and face public backlash. In the end, survival often takes priority. So who pays the price? Farmers, factory workers, or the American economy? This isn't just about one factory or a $55 million investment. It's a clear example of the tough choices American companies are facing in today's protectionist climate. In this video, we dig into the behind-the-scenes strategy behind John Deere's controversial move. Make sure to subscribe to Timefold, hit the bell, and stay tuned for more stories on how economic and political shifts are reshaping North America. John Deere just stunned the market with its announcement of a new $55 million factory in Nuevo León, Mexico. The plant is scheduled to open in 2026 and will focus on serving the growing demand for agricultural equipment in Latin America, especially in countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, where modern farming tools are increasingly in demand. For decades, John Deere has been known for its heavyweight 6R and 7R tractors and combine harvesters built in the American heartland, from Illinois to Iowa. But the company is emphasizing that this expansion doesn't mean it's abandoning U.S. manufacturing. In fact, less than 5% of John Deere's sales in fiscal years 2023 and 2024 came from products imported from Mexico. To the USA company spokesperson, confirmed that the new Mexican facility won't replace or disrupt any key production lines in the US flagship. Products like high horsepower tractors and harvesters will continue to be made in America. The Mexico plant will focus on smaller equipment, cab assemblies, compact loaders, and multi-purpose machines. This strategy allows John Deere to lower production costs while boosting its competitiveness in the Latin American market. And it wasn't a spontaneous move. According to a 2023 study by Ariston, Latin America purchased nearly 259,000 agricultural machines that year, with projections suggesting that number will exceed 338,000 units by 2029, growing at about 4.6% annually. With Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia leading the demand, this is a market that no serious manufacturer can afford to ignore. To strengthen its position, John Deere is also building a dedicated transport corridor at the Laredo-Colombia border crossing in Tamaulipas, helping speed up deliveries to South America. It's a strategic play. Protect U.S. manufacturing while establishing a foothold in a growing region, all in a world where trade rules can change overnight. By diversifying and building in Mexico, John Deere hopes to hold on to its cost advantages and deliver equipment on time to international buyers. But not everyone is happy. Trump's proposed 200% tariff, widely seen as a direct response to Deere's move into Mexico, sparked immediate controversy in political circles and among the public. According to Reuters, Deere stock dropped over 1.5% in after-hours trading shortly after the announcement. Proof of just how jittery markets are when it comes to tariff threats. The reality is that the vast majority of Deere's core equipment, making up over 3/4 of its North American revenue, is still built in factories in Illinois, Iowa, and Georgia. And the company has also pledged to invest another $20 billion into its US operations and technology over the next 10 years. That's a major commitment to maintaining a strong domestic manufacturing base. Still, for many of the engineers, mechanics, and multi-generation workers in Iowa and Illinois, news of a new facility in Mexico feels like a gut punch. Even if only a small part of output is shifting, less than 5%, it's enough to trigger real concerns about job security. As the first compact loaders roll off the line in Mexico and head to customers in South America, the big question remains: can John Deere preserve its Made in America identity while protecting its US workforce? Or will it slowly become a poster child for globalization, where profit trumps stability and the trust of American workers? In today's volatile world of politics and economics, John Deere now finds itself at the center of a high-stakes challenge: cling to its roots or adapt to survive. The company is being pulled in two directions. One anchored in loyalty to American farmers and its long-standing legacy, the other pushing it toward cost-cutting and global expansion. With trade battles, rising tariffs, and political pressure mounting, every move John Deere makes is under the microscope. What happens next won't just impact the company. It could reverberate across the global food supply chain. As US production costs continue to rise, the company's competitive edge is under threat. The road ahead for John Deere is filled with tough choices, and the outcome will shape the future of American manufacturing in a globalized world economy. Manufacturing wages in the US have climbed to an average of around $27 an hour, according to Investopedia, dozens of times higher than wages in many developing countries. For labor-intensive industries, that cost quickly becomes a heavy burden. On top of that, the wave of mass resignations between 2021 and 2022 left companies scrambling to fill gaps, particularly for skilled workers like engineers and mechanics. Businesses were forced to raise wages even further just to keep their existing talent. At the same time, global competitors are turning up the heat. Asian companies like Japan's Kubota and India's Mahindra are aggressively pushing lower-cost alternatives into the market. For instance, a popular Kubota subcompact tractor can sell for between $12,000 and $18,000, while a similar model from John Deere typically starts at $20,000 to $30,000, making it around 30% more expensive. This growing price gap is pushing Deere to rethink its entire cost strategy if it wants to protect its market share, even in its home market. With Mexico just across the border, moving part of its production there has become almost inevitable. Manufacturing wages in Mexico range from $4.50 to $5.10 per hour, up to 80% less than in the US, and the Mexican government has heavily invested in modern logistics infrastructure, highways, rail hubs, dry ports, and border crossing improvements, all aimed at supporting regional manufacturing. For John Deere, this setup offers the ability to speed up production of cab assemblies, mini loaders, and other lower-tech machines, while keeping prices competitive and delivery times short. And Deere isn't alone. American manufacturing giants like Caterpillar and Ford have also openly considered shifting more production to Mexico or other low-cost regions. The message is clear. To remain competitive, US companies are being forced to seriously evaluate moving production away from traditional domestic factories. Now, John Deere faces a serious challenge: how to balance its Made in the USA legacy, a source of pride for generations, with the relentless pressure to cut costs and expand globally. When the company disclosed that up to 10% of its production may shift to Mexico, the backlash was swift. Concerns were raised not only about short-term revenue impacts, but also about how the move might hurt Deere's reputation for quality. Almost immediately, Donald Trump responded with harsh rhetoric, threatening to slap a 200% tariff on any John Deere equipment made in Mexico and brought back into the US market. Investors didn't take it lightly. Deere's stock fell over 1.5% in the next trading session, highlighting just how sensitive the market is to the risk of rising import costs. Experts quickly warned extreme protectionism might backfire. Tariffs intended to protect domestic industries could end up hurting them, leading to higher costs, supply chain delays, and job losses. Looking ahead, John Deere has pledged to invest $20 billion over the next decade to upgrade its U.S. facilities, adopt new technologies, and retain skilled American workers. The company is also betting on automation and artificial intelligence to boost productivity. But these efforts take time and major capital, and competitors aren't waiting. Asian and European manufacturers are already leveraging their lower cost production to secure huge contracts across Latin America, a region projected to consume over 338,000 agricultural machines by 2029, growing at nearly 5% a year. It's too big of a market to ignore. In this high-stakes global economy, shaped by labor costs, tariffs, and fierce international competition, John Deere faces a pivotal choice. Stick to its US-made roots and higher price tags, or expand production abroad and risk losing part of its heritage. Whichever direction the company takes, the ripple effects will go far beyond just John Deere. The outcome could impact the entire food supply chain, the livelihoods of thousands of workers, and the trust of farmers who have counted on the nearly 200-year-old brand for generations. And now, the gap in labor costs between the US and Mexico has become more than just a number. It's a clear symbol of the fundamental shift happening in American agriculture. The political spotlight is intensifying. Donald Trump has made John Deere's move a central issue in his push for tougher trade policy. On national TV, he called the company's expansion into Mexico a betrayal of American workers and repeated his threat to impose a 200% import tariff on any Deere machinery returning to the US. Within hours, John Deere stock dropped again, another 1.5% in after-hours trading, showing Wall Street's immediate reaction. This wasn't just a warning. It was more like a declaration of war on one of America's most iconic manufacturers. Trump took things further, weaving the issue into his campaign speeches. At a rally in Pennsylvania, he told supporters that anyone who stood with John Deere was standing against American interests, calling on farmers and workers to rally under his familiar slogan, "Make America Great Again." But many economists are urging caution. A 200% tariff could violate the USMCA trade agreement, strain US-Mexico relations, and most importantly, raise prices for American farmers and consumers. The effects wouldn't stop at tractors and harvesters. Across industries, from autos to heavy equipment and even medical devices, executives are taking notice. Business leaders in cities like Detroit and Cincinnati say they've already put overseas investment plans on hold, fearing they might be next in the political crosshairs. If even John Deere isn't safe, who is? Trump's threats are planting seeds of doubt about the reliability of the US business climate. Companies that once embraced nearshoring to cut logistics costs are now rethinking the political risks of operating across borders. According to the US Department of Commerce, more than 60% of Fortune 500 companies currently operate manufacturing or assembly facilities in Mexico that serve the North American market. If tariff protections are suddenly reversed, the impact could unravel global supply chains and drive up consumer prices across the board. And the consequences for agriculture would be even more direct. If John Deere is forced to pull back its plans, the supply of essential farm equipment could tighten. Rental and repair costs would rise, and farmers, especially mid-season, might face serious disruptions. The result? Higher food prices and additional pressure on the Federal Reserve as it tries to keep inflation under control. Trump's tariff war is no longer just political posturing. It's becoming a real stress test for the US economy. From Midwest cornfields to Silicon Valley boardrooms, one question now looms large. Is expanding production abroad still worth it amid growing political and trade tensions? And more importantly, are American workers becoming the biggest casualties of extreme protectionist policies? In today's interconnected global economy, a single government policy can send shockwaves across dozens of industries. Take John Deere, once the pride of American agriculture. Its iconic green machines have long symbolized hard work and heritage across the farmlands of Iowa and Nebraska. But when the company announced plans to shift part of its production to Mexico, the response from Washington was swift and furious. Former President Donald Trump didn't just threaten a 200% import tariff on Deere equipment. He also ordered customs officials to tighten inspections on imported agricultural machinery. As a result, containers of farm equipment were stranded at the border, unable to reach American farms on time. According to Reuters, entire harvests were disrupted, and some farms lost hundreds of millions of dollars simply because tractors and harvesters were delayed. Amid this growing chaos, American farmers began organizing their own movement. Many rallied around the right to repair cause, a pushback against John Deere's long-standing policy of locking down its equipment with proprietary software that restricted repairs. Farmers argued they were being forced to rely on John Deere's authorized service technicians, unable to make even basic fixes on their own. The frustration sparked a legislative response. At least 11 states, including Colorado and Illinois, introduced laws requiring equipment manufacturers to provide repair tools, manuals, and software access to both farmers and independent mechanics. After Colorado's law took effect in early 2024, repair wait times reportedly dropped by nearly a third, helping many farmers stay on schedule for planting and harvesting. The movement quickly gained momentum. At an agricultural conference in Des Moines, Iowa, hundreds of farmers marched with signs demanding Congress take action and force John Deere to end its restrictive repair practices. Meanwhile, back at the border, dozens of shipments of Deere harvesters remained stuck, held up for tariff checks. According to The Guardian, Nebraska alone lost more than $50 million in the first half of June due to delays, just as the wheat harvest peaked. John Deere now finds itself squeezed from both ends. On one side, farmers are demanding faster repairs and better access to service. On the other, the company is trying to cut costs by shifting part of its production to Mexico, a decision that's triggered political retaliation and public backlash. To make matters worse, John Deere is facing a federal lawsuit filed by the FTC, joined by multiple states. The suit accuses the company of illegally blocking independent repairs and creating a monopoly over its servicing model. If the lawsuit is successful, Deere could be forced to pay hundreds of millions in penalties, and its nearly 200-year reputation as a trusted partner to farmers could take a massive hit. The core of the issue is the software John Deere has built into its tractors and harvesters. This software effectively prevents farmers from making even basic fixes, like replacing a sensor or updating a program. Instead, they must hire authorized technicians who charge $150 to $180 an hour, plus travel fees, often several times more expensive than independent alternatives. These restrictions have caused repair costs to skyrocket. Some farmers have even been forced to leave fields idle rather than absorb the expense. According to Investigate Midwest, the cost of parts and labor for farm machinery has jumped 41% since 2020, adding more financial strain to farmers already struggling with rising input prices. To make matters worse, farmers often face wait times of 10 to 14 days just to get access to diagnostic software, delays that can wipe out an entire crop cycle and cost thousands in lost revenue. Leaked internal documents have further damaged Deere's image. These files suggest the company deliberately designed its software and support policies to shut out independent repair shops and capitalize on peak farming seasons to maximize maintenance profits. As more of this evidence becomes part of the FTC's legal case, John Deere is now facing mounting accusations of exploiting its market power at the expense of the very farmers it claims to support. The brand that once stood for reliability and partnership is increasingly viewed as a monopoly gatekeeping vital services. Under pressure from both regulators and public opinion, the company now faces a major decision: double down on restrictive service policies to protect profits, or loosen control to rebuild trust with the farmers who built its legacy. Meanwhile, the broader crisis continues to unfold. John Deere has suspended part of its production, while new tariffs threaten to disrupt agriculture across more than 1.7 million acres in Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. In a worst-case scenario, The combination of equipment shortages and skyrocketing repair costs could leave farmers unable to plant, irrigate, or harvest on time, triggering a potential national food security crisis. In an unexpected twist, the Mexican government stepped in with a proposal to ease tensions and keep agricultural machinery flowing. Guarantee the right to repair, ensuring US farmers have access to the tools, parts, and software needed to fix their own machines. Create a support fund to help offset farm losses caused by machinery delays during critical planting and harvest seasons. Facilitate technology sharing, so small-scale farmers can maintain and operate equipment independently without relying on authorized dealerships. These measures go beyond John Deere. They send a warning to the entire global agricultural equipment industry. When profit-driven restrictions collide with the daily needs of millions of working families, the consequences aren't just local. They shake global supply chains. This unfolding story reveals a hard truth. Protectionist policies, instead of securing national food supplies, may actually put them at greater risk. John Deere now faces the greatest test in its 185-year history. Caught between the threat of massive tariffs, government lawsuits, and a growing backlash from its own customers, the company must choose its next move carefully. Can this iconic American manufacturer survive both a policy war and a crisis of trust? As protectionism clashes head-on with the realities of global trade, U.S. agriculture is standing at a crossroads. One path means building trade walls in the name of protecting domestic jobs. The other means embracing international cooperation to remain competitive. Whichever path is taken, the consequences will be profound, not just for John Deere, but for the future of American farming. If protectionist policies persist, John Deere might be able to keep factory jobs on U.S. soil, but that would come at a price: higher operating costs and reduced production capacity. On the other hand, embracing a more open market would expose the company to intense global competition, yet it could also unlock new opportunities for growth like never before. In the days ahead, a critical question will be answered. Who truly holds the reins of America's harvest? Is it the president, wielding the power of tariffs? Or the farmers, working the land and feeding the nation? This is a defining moment, not just for John Deere, but for the future of American agriculture. If you found this story insightful, be sure to subscribe to the Timefold channel and hit the like button. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the economic and political forces shaping our world.